giving them a strategic roadmap to beat back impeachment. It's making them all hide and run for cover.
And that reminds me, I'm glad you brought up the Mueller investigation, because that was another thing that I forgot to fact check. President Trump said they, quote, couldn't find one damn thing having to do with collusion. Not true. They could not find any evidence that prosecutors thought was prosecutable when it came to conspiracy to cooperate with Russia in Russia's interference in the U.S. election. That is not the same thing as not being able to find one damn thing. Laura Coates, let me ask you, do you think that this fight over subpoenas will ultimately end up in front of the U.S. Supreme Court?
It should, because of course this is the President of the United States trying to say you're actually not co-equal branches of government. If you can just thumb your nose at the congressional authority and the congressional subpoena power, particularly when, keep in mind, the First Amendment was an afterthought to the Constitution. Impeachment was baked into the recipe of American democracy. The founding fathers said, this is absolutely going to be part of it, and they gave Congress the authority to have, particularly impeachment, oversight authority, and to have that compulsion power. If you then say, if you're the President of the United States, I'm not going to respect that, and his notion about cooperating. Remember why we're here, Jake. We're here, and we know there is a whistleblower complaint because the president did not cooperate with the process of the Whistleblower Protection Act in the first place. It was exposed to the American people because they did not follow the proper channels. So now if the Supreme Court or the judiciary does not weigh in and say, hold on, we have to flex our power, because frankly, if we don't assert our own power to show you can be checked, what becomes of the judiciary later on? So there is an alliance being formed inadvertently by the presidents thumbing their nose at Congress to say, judiciary, step up to the plate, or actually you're next on the menu.
And Jeff, let's talk about the fundamental issue here, which is, according to the transcript, which is in alignment with the whistleblower complaint, according to the president's own director of national intelligence, the president pushed, asked, requested that the president of Ukraine investigate the president's domestic political rivals, Joe Biden and his son, Hunter Biden. That is just a fact. He asked the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, to do that. Jeff Mason, a very kind and excellent reporter that we know from Reuters, tried to get President Trump to answer the question just now, what did you want him to do with regard to the Bidens? And very tellingly, President Trump would not answer that question.
He would not repeatedly answer that question. And Jeff Mason, it's hard to imagine another fair, even-keeled reporter who's interviewed this president many times in the Oval Office. President Trump would not answer that for a reason.
And was rude to Jeff, as
incredibly rude to him, which, of course, is his prerogative, I guess. That's hardly news here. But the reality here is this. It is the memo of that conversation, a rough transcript, if you will, that started all of this out. So I think it's important as we go forward here to not get wrapped up in the process. That is the point. What happened last week is the big point here. That is the roadmap through all this, what President Trump was asking for. And that is not what he would talk about today. He called it a hoax. He accused Chairman Schiff of a bunch of things. I was thinking back, and we were talking earlier, during the Benghazi investigation, whistleblowers frequently met with Republican members of the committee. That is not unusual.
All the time.
For sure. So
all the time.
It sounds sexy, perhaps, but that is how it works. They go to the committee staff for guidance on how to proceed.
In fact, if I can interrupt for just 1 second,
sure.
One of this whistleblower's attorneys, Mark Zaid,
exactly,
represented the Benghazi Five and worked closely with then Chairman Darrell Issa, Republican of California, to bring those whistleblower stories to the fore.
It's a specialty. Some lawyers specialize in drunk driving cases. Some specialize here in Washington in whistleblower cases. So that is what you do, which is why Chairman Schiff's spokesperson is not saying, there's nothing wrong here. This is what they were doing. They were going there for guidance. So the president believes he caught Chairman Schiff in something here. This is pro forma. This is how it works. But I think taking stock of everything, right now we know that what Dana was saying earlier, the biggest development so far today, and the day is young, is that there could be more articles of impeachment because of obstruction of Congress.
And
to tie together these 2 points, I mean, the reason Congress has asked, they didn't subpoena everyone at first, but asked people to testify voluntarily, and is now subpoenaing people, is because they are following up on things outlined in the whistleblower complaint or suggested by the transcript or by other evidence that's come to light. They're not randomly, let's have this person, let's have that person. They've been pretty focused, I've got to say. And so they have a responsibility to investigate, and the way you investigate is by asking for documents and asking for sworn testimony. This is not hard. So it's not even that Trump makes it seem as if, Nancy Pelosi's throwing out subpoenas right and left. They've actually been reasonably disciplined, especially in the last week or two.
So they weren't cookies, as they said? They weren't just handing out Thin Mint cookies? Okay, she's not a Girl Scout.
As we speak, the State Department Inspector General is on Capitol Hill briefing staffers and the members who are here about something that could be very significant to what we have been talking about.
And questions about whether or not the State Department is fully cooperating.
Right, because the State Department IG, just to make it clear, only goes to the Hill when he or she's had, or he in this case, I believe, has had difficulty resolving it internally at the State Department.
Right.
That's what he's obliged
to go
to go to Congress because he hasn't been able to get the Secretary of State or whoever to deal with whatever the complaint was. So it really is
we
striking.
could have a whole new avenue of information on this in the next hour.
I want to play the sound because I do think it is so important that President Trump refused to answer this question. Because remember, first President Trump said this was a perfect call. Then the evidence came out from the White House that President Trump indeed asked the president of Ukraine to investigate his domestic political rivals, which many experts and authorities, including former Republican Congressman Charlie Dent on this show one day ago, said is a clear abuse of power. President Trump has said he did nothing wrong. Very few Republicans have been willing to come forward and say, oh yeah, this is absolutely fine. His most loyal supporters have, but generally speaking, there has not been a mass movement of Republicans saying, this is great, I want every Republican or Democratic president to call foreign countries to investigate Republicans and Democrats in this country, because, of course, that would be exactly against what the founders of this country thought was appropriate. Here is Jeff Mason, an excellent and mild-mannered reporter with Reuters, asking President Trump, what did you want President Zelensky to investigate about former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter? Take a listen.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, it was just a follow-up of what I just asked you, sir.
Listen, you ready? We have the president of Finland. Ask him a